Hey guys, welcome back to Dan's Chess Lounge. Today we're going to continue going over our player spotlight for the 2018 Candidates Tournament. Today's spotlight is going to be about Liren Ding. He's a Chinese Grandmaster. He's the second Chinese player to crack the top 10, and he's actually the first Chinese player to ever qualify for the Candidates Tournament. He's a relatively young guy. He's only 25 years old. He was born on October 24th, 1992. And the thing about the Chinese chess players, they're very quiet and private chess players. So not much is known about their private life, but there is a great article that I'm going to put in the description where he gave a nice interview after the World Cup last year, and we were able to get some more insights about his personal life. He's actually just graduated law school in China, so and I like that because he's just not dedicated to chess. He's a well-rounded person, and in the article it kind of talks about how his parents, want him to do other things besides just playing chess because you never know what's going to happen in your life. Things may come up. He might not be able to be a professional chess player forever. So he has to have a well-rounded background, and I really like that about him. And so he just completed law school, or he had one class to finish back in November, so I'm pretty sure that he's completed it by now. And as far as his favorite sports and hobbies, he likes soccer and basketball. American basketball. So let's go ahead and get into the game. This is actually considered his immortal game. This is one of the best games that he's ever played, and took place during the Chinese Chess League last year. And his opponent is Jinshi. He's an 18-year-old grandmaster, so he's an up-and-comer himself. And Liren Ding was white. Excuse me, Liren Ding was black. So let's go ahead and get into the game. D4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3. So what are we going to have? A Nimzo, Queen's Indian. We have a Nimzo-Indian defense. And if white plays Queen c2, that'd be a classical. If he plays e3, that'd be a Rubinstein variation. So we have a knight f3. This is the three knights variation. And with this, white's not concerned about black destroying his pawn structure with bishop takes knight. So white is just going to say, I'm going to go ahead and continue to develop my pieces and continue with my plan. Castles, bishop g5, pins the knight to the queen, develops the piece as well. c5 is a good central strike. e3. C takes D, Queen takes D. This is all fine, standard. Knight C6, attacks the Queen, gets the tempo, developing a piece. Queen drops back to D3 here. And A6 puts the question to the bishop. What are you going to do? Bishop drops back to H4. Now you have another central strike. D5. Rook D1. And G5 followed by knight E4. And right here I just want to say that the knight is on a great outpost there on E4. But there is a negative side to that. In order to accomplish that and to get that, black had to weaken his king side. He had to play H6 and G5, which are long-term weaknesses. The thing about pawns are they can't go backwards, of course. So he's going to have to live with his king side being exposed and weakened. Knight d2. This allows white to capture that great knight on e4. So Liren retreats the knight to c5. Hits the queen. Queen moves back to c2. Now you have d4. If you look at white's position, you can see that white's king is still in the middle of the board. It's not even one move away from castling. It's two moves away from castling. So a good idea and fundamental is to open up the position then if the king is still uncastled. So that's exactly what he's attempting to do with d4. Knight goes to f3 here. If you notice, the rook on d1 is x-raying the queen there on d8. So it's not a good idea now, obviously, for black to capture or open up the position with the queen being right there on d8. So Liren plays e5. He's offering up a pawn here. So what would you do, guys? Would you accept the pawn sacrifice? What's the consequences of that? Bai goes ahead and plays knight takes e5. He accepts the pawn. What would you do now as black? What's the follow-up here? Why did he offer up a pawn like that? It couldn't be just to recapture knight takes knight, then the bishop would just capture back. Like if he played knight takes knight here, the bishop captures back, hits the pawn there, is on a great diagonal there. So what's the reason? What's the follow-up here? What would you guys do? What did Liren Ding do? D takes C. Are you serious? Yes, he played D takes C. Did he just completely forget about his queen on D8? What's going on here? This is unbelievable. A queen sacrifice? Really? Yes. Rook takes D8. Liren Ding just completely gave up his queen here. Now you have C takes B2, check. It's a discovered check there. So you have the rook attacking the rook on D8. You have the discovered attack on the king there. The pawn is one square from promoting. What's going on here? This game is just crazy right now. So the best move in this position here is rook D2, right? If white plays rook d2 to block the check, then you would have rook d8, and the knight goes back to f3. And believe it or not, the game is pretty even right here. When I put it on the engine gave like a very, very slight advantage to white. Even being the queen up, it's just a slight advantage for white here. So this was the best continuation for white. But he didn't play that. In the game, he played king e2. And this is a blunder because now black can hunt the king down. He can go on a king hunt now. You have rook takes d8. The queen goes ahead and eats that pawn on b2. Make sure that it doesn't have any hopes of promoting ever again. But now you have knight a4, which hits the queen, tempo on the queen. Queen goes to c2. Knight c3 check. Attacks the king. The king is running off, trying to escape. Goes to f3. Rook d4. This is a brilliant move here. Rook d4. So it looks like the rook can just be captured, right? What happens if white captures the rook? If e takes d4, then you have knight takes d4, forking the king and the queen. And this would be a win. This is too much material for black. This wins on the spot, really, for black. So he can't, the rook is uncapturable at this point here. So h3 was played in the game. h3 tries to control the g4 square because now black wants to push these pawns here and trap the king here. So h3 tries to control this g4 square, and it also gives white some escape squares as well. So white can try to tuck the bishop there on h2 and maybe slide his king over to g3. So again, you have h5 here with the idea of playing g4 coming up. Bishop goes back to h2, g4. Now, if h takes g4 here, h takes g4, then the king moves over, and now you would have rook d2. And this is lost for white. The queen wouldn't have anywhere to go except for over here on the side of the board where all the action is over here on the king side. This is lost for white. So instead of that, you had king g3. The king just moved over. And now you have rook d2, which is a similar continuation as before. If the queen eats the rook here, then you would have that same fork. The knight would just go to e4, forking the king and the queen, and then that would be one game. So the queen cannot capture that rook there in d2, so it hides out over there in b3. If you take a look at the position, the queen is on the opposite side of the board, away from its king. It can't help defend. It's not attacking. It's just a really bad position for white. Knight e4 check. King goes to h4. Bishop e7 check. King snaps off that pawn on h5. Now you have king g7, which is a very good move because not only is the king coming in to help out with the attack, he's also clearing the way for the rook here on a8 to swing over to h8 and join the attack. Bishop f4. Bishop f5 here, continuing with the plan. Black would like to swing this rook right over here to h8 and join in on the attack. Now you have bishop h6 check. If the king goes to f6, it's important to know that this would actually save white. White will be able to stay in the game if the king goes to f6 here, because now you would have knight takes knight on c6, pawn takes, and now after that the bishop checks. The king would be able to just walk his way back up to safety. Can you believe that? The king would literally be able to just slow step it right on back to g1, and the game would be pretty even, actually. It would be anyone's game at this point. So it was a very, very great move for Liren Ding to see that he couldn't go to f6. So he played king h7. So that move, that bishop h6 move, stopped Black from being able to sweep his rook over to h8 and join the attack for the moment. So now you have queen takes on b7. It hits the rook, it hits the knight, it also hits the bishop. So white's trying to have some type of counterplay. Now you have this great move, rook takes f2. And the real reason behind that was not just to capture that pawn, but what it did, it removed the defender of that g3 square. So now the knight can hop in that g3 square, and that would actually be checkmate if he could do that. So rook takes f2 is a good move there. Now you have bishop g5. So now if knight g3 check is played, the king can escape to h4. But now Black is able to get his rook move in that he's been trying for the last several moves. Rook h8. Knight takes f7, which attacks that rook. The bishop goes to g6 here to remove the knight and check. King takes g4. Knight e5 here, check. And at this point here, Jinshi resigned the game. He gave it up because there is a mate in 3 that is going to happen. If play would have continued here, it would have looked something like knight takes e5, bishop f5 check, king goes to h5, and then king g8 check. Bishop blocks the check with bishop h6, but then you have the knight g3 move that Black has been trying for the last several moves. So this game here was a beautiful game by Liren Ding. Many of the top players on the circuit have said that this should be the game of the year for 2017. Liren Ding also said, he was quoted as saying that this is his most beautiful game that he's ever played in his career so far. So it was a great, great game. If he plays like this in the Candidates tournament, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. It's going to be a great, great battle. As far as my own personal opinion, I don't think that he's going to win the Candidates tournament just because this is his very first time. It's going to be some nerves, some jitters. It's going to be a learning experience for him. So I don't think he's going to win, but I do think he's going to do well. I don't think he's going to be too far over his head. I don't think he's going to come in last place or anything like that. So I think he's going to do well, but I don't think he's going to win. Not this time around. He's the future of Chinese chess for sure. So he's going to be competing in many more candidates tournaments, I'm sure. So, okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.